was eating a microwaved burrito when the lab door burst open and Garrett told me I was about to lose my job. Not for incompetence, for refusing to falsify data. "Doyle, you need to see this before you submit anything," he said, his lab coat spotted with what I hoped was coffee. "The samples from the medieval probe, the contamination issue you flagged." "It's not contamination," I said. I'd spent 3 weeks at NASA Johnson's biolab in Houston analyzing the tissue samples recovered from that impossible satellite. Medieval metallurgy shouldn't exist, medieval propulsion systems definitely shouldn't exist, and medieval fucking astronauts. That was the part that kept me up at night. The DNA is pristine, no degradation, no bacterial colonies. It's like someone flash froze these organs yesterday. NASA recovered a medieval satellite on April 17, 2025, a probe launched in 1025 AD with technology that shouldn't have existed in that era, and when they opened its biological sample storage, they found human tissue perfectly preserved, skin samples, blood, even complete organs, but the DNA didn't match any human population that existed 1,000 years ago. The genetic markers suggested these samples came from people living in 2025. From individuals who are alive right now and carved into the satellite's hull in every language that existed in 1025 were the same desperate words. "These are samples of those who will die. We are from your future. We sent this back to warn you. Do not let them die. Change their fates. Break the pattern." Garrett pulled up a file on his tablet. His hand shook slightly. I ran the samples through CODIS, then Interpol. Then every genetic database I could access without triggering a federal review. He turned the screen toward me. "Doyle, they're not medieval DNA. They're contemporary matches." The screen showed a grid of faces, living faces. A congressman from Ohio, a microbiologist from UC Berkeley, a construction worker from Atlanta. 47 people total, scattered across the globe. "Impossible," I said, but my voice sounded hollow. "Cross-contamination during recovery. Someone's tissue got mixed with..." The satellite was sealed with medieval solder. We carbon-dated the hull. We authenticated the inscriptions with 3 independent linguistics teams. That probe left Earth in 1025 AD. Garrett's eyes looked glassy, manic. And it's carrying genetic material from people who are alive right now in 2025. People who have no idea their organs are floating around in a 1,000-year-old time capsule. Outside the lab windows, Houston sprawled beneath a smoggy April sky. Normal traffic, normal people, normal world. "There's more," Garrett said quietly. "The computer core. We finally decrypted it this morning." "What did it say?" "It has dates, Doyle. Death dates. For all 47 matches." His voice dropped to barely a whisper. "They all die in October, 6 months from now." The conference room smelled like burnt plastic and anxiety. Someone had left a laptop charger plugged in too long near the heating vent, and the acrid smell mixed with the stale air conditioning made my sinuses ache. Director Vince Harmon sat at the head of the table, his reading glasses perched on his forehead like a second set of eyes. He'd been with NASA since the shuttle program, and he looked like a man who'd seen too many budget hearings and not enough sleep. "Walk me through this again," he said, slowly. I pulled up the satellite imagery on the main screen. The probe looked like something out of a museum, crude iron plating, hand-forged rivets, inscriptions carved deep into the metal. But the internal mechanisms, the ones we'd only discovered after cutting through 3 layers of shielding, those told a different story. "The outer shell is authentic medieval construction," I said. "We've verified it with metallurgical analysis. The iron composition matches 11th century European smelting techniques. The inscriptions use linguistic patterns consistent with Old Norse, Anglo-Saxon, and 6 other languages from that period." Garrett stood near the window, his reflection ghostly in the glass. "But the core is something else entirely. There's a cryopreservation system that shouldn't exist. We're talking about technology that's more advanced than what we have now. Magnetic suspension for the biological samples. Quantum encrypted data storage." "Quantum," Vince repeated flatly. "The computer uses principles we're still trying to figure out in 2025. Garrett said. Whoever built the inner mechanisms wasn't from 1025. I switched the display to show the DNA analysis. We extracted tissue from 47 sealed containers, skin grafts, blood samples, 2 complete human hearts, a liver, part of a lung. The preservation is perfect, better than anything we could achieve with modern cryotech. And they match living people, Vince said, not a question. Yes, we ran the samples through every database we could access. Some of the matches were immediate, people with genetic profiles already on file. Others took longer. I pulled up the list of names. Anthony Delgado, congressman from Ohio's 7th District. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, microbiologist at Berkeley. Jerome Williams, works construction in Atlanta. The youngest is 19. The oldest is 63. Vince leaned forward. Have any of them been contacted? Absolutely not, I said quickly. We're keeping this contained. But sir, the implications... I understand the implications, Doyle. His voice had an edge now. You're telling me someone from the future sent genetic material back 1,000 years? That's the story? The inscriptions say it explicitly, Garrett interjected. He read from his tablet. These are samples of those who will die. We are from your future. We sent this back to warn you. Do not let them die. Change their fates. Break the pattern. The room went quiet except for the hum of the ventilation system. There's one more thing, I said, pulling up the final file. The computer core contains execution dates. All 47 people die on the same day, October 17th, 2025. 6 months from now. Vince removed his glasses slowly. Execution dates. That's what the file calls them. Not death dates or projected casualties. Executions, plural. I zoomed in on the log entry, and there's a message, written in English. Recent English, not medieval. I read it aloud, though I'd already memorized every word. We sent this warning back 1,000 years, hoping you'd have time to stop it. But we realize now the satellite itself was the trigger. By finding it, by opening it, by analyzing the DNA inside, you've activated the targeting system. The deaths are coded into the satellite's return. We didn't send a warning, we sent the weapon itself. We're sorry. We didn't understand the loop. Stop us from sending this. Garrett's reflection in the window looked pale, distorted. We decrypted that file 4 hours ago. Since then, I've been trying to figure out what activated the targeting system means. There's no active electronics in the probe, no power source, no transmission capabilities. It's inert. Maybe it's symbolic, Vince suggested, but he didn't sound convinced. A metaphor for causality, a self-fulfilling prophecy. Or maybe we actually triggered something when we opened it, I said. Something we can't detect yet. Vince stood up, walked to the window beside Garrett. Outside, the Houston traffic crawled along NASA Parkway. People driving home from work. People who had no idea their genetic material might be stored in a medieval satellite, marked for death in 6 months. Here's what we're going to do, Vince said finally. We quarantine the satellite, full isolation protocols. Nobody else accesses the biological samples or the computer core. We bring in a specialist team, physicists, temporal mechanics experts if such people exist. And we monitor the 47 individuals on that list, discreetly. If something's going to happen to them, we'll see it coming. And if we can't stop it? Garrett asked quietly. Vince turned from the window. Then we figure out who sent that probe back in time, and we make damn sure they never build it. My phone buzzed. A text from the night shift supervisor. Core temperature in satellite chamber dropping. Minus 40 degrees Celsius and falling. Not responding to environmental controls. I showed the message to Vince. His jaw tightened. Get down there. Now. We ran. The satellite chamber was located in Building 31, 3 floors below ground level. We took the stairs because the elevator felt too slow, too confined. My lungs burned by the time we hit the basement corridor. The temperature drop was visible before we even reached the chamber. Frost crawled along the walls, delicate patterns spreading like frozen veins. Our breath came out in white plumes. This doesn't make sense, Garrett said, his teeth starting to chatter. The environmental systems are designed to handle extreme temps. They shouldn't fail like this. I swiped my badge at the chamber door. The lock clicked, but the metal felt ice cold even through my palm. Inside, the air hit us like a physical wall, so cold it hurt to breathe. The satellite sat on its examination platform in the center of the room, and I immediately saw why the temperature had dropped. The metal surface was covered in frost, but underneath, the probe itself was glowing. Not with light exactly, more like heat bleeding through into the visible spectrum, a deep red-orange that pulsed slowly, rhythmically, like a heartbeat. "Tell me you're seeing this," I said. Garrett moved closer, his tablet raised to take readings. Core temperature of the satellite itself is rising, currently at 200 degrees Celsius and climbing. But it's radiating cold somehow. The surrounding air temperature is -60 and dropping. "That violates basic thermodynamics," I said. "Yeah, well, add it to the list of impossible things about this probe." I approached the platform carefully. The inscriptions on the hull were easier to read now. The frost made them stand out in sharp relief. Words in languages that shouldn't share the same artifact. Warnings carved by hands that had been dust for a millennium. My phone buzzed. Another text from the night supervisor. All 47 individuals on the list just received simultaneous phone calls. Unknown origin. They all hung up after hearing the same message. FBI is investigating. I showed it to Garrett. His face went pale. "What did the message say?" he asked. I called the supervisor. He answered on the first ring. "Doyle, this is getting weird. Really weird." "What did the calls say?" "Just one sentence, repeated 3 times in each person's native language." He paused. "They were told, 'Your sample has been activated.'" The satellite's glow intensified. The metal groaned softly, expanding with heat while the surrounding air grew colder. Condensation formed on every surface, then froze instantly. "We need to shut this down," Garrett said. "Isolate it. Cut power to the building if we have to." "There is no power to cut," I reminded him. "The probe is inert. It has been for 1,000 years. Whatever's happening now, it's not drawing from our grid." Vince's voice crackled over the intercom. "Doyle, get out of there. We're reading energy spikes we can't explain. The chamber's not safe." But I couldn't look away from the satellite. The inscriptions seemed to pulse with the same rhythm as the glow. And beneath them, barely visible through the frost, I noticed something we'd missed during the initial examination. Smaller text, modern text, etched into the metal so finely it looked like microprinting. I grabbed a handheld microscope from the equipment rack and moved closer, ignoring the cold that made my fingers numb. The text was in English, recent English, and it was a list. Names, dates, locations. I recognized the first entry immediately. Anthony Delgado. Congressional hearing. Hart Senate Office Building. October 17th, 2025. 2:47 p.m. "Jesus," I whispered. Garrett leaned over my shoulder. "What is that?" "It's not just death dates. It's exact times, exact locations." I scrolled through the microscope's display, reading entry after entry. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, Berkeley Lab, October 17th, 3:15 p.m. Jerome Williams. Construction site, Atlanta, October 17th, 2:23 p.m. How is that possible? This satellite is 1,000 years old. The outer shell is 1,000 years old, I corrected. But someone added this recently. Maybe when they sent it back, maybe before. The satellite's temperature reading climbed past 400 degrees Celsius. The examination platform beneath it started to warp, metal bending under impossible thermal stress. But the frost on the walls grew thicker, ice forming in crystalline sheets. Garrett's tablet beeped urgently. "Doyle, I'm picking up a signal." Low frequency. It started when the temperature dropped. What kind of signal? Broadcasting. Not receiving, broadcasting. The satellite is transmitting something. To where? He shook his head slowly, his eyes wide. Not where. When? the signal's moving backwards through time. I don't know how that's possible, but the telemetry is clear. It's sending data into the past. Sending what data? Genetic markers, the DNA sequences from the biological samples, and coordinates, time coordinates. The pieces snapped together with horrible clarity. The satellite wasn't a warning. It was a targeting beacon. Someone in the future had encoded 47 people's genetic information, sent it back 1,000 years, and now that we'd opened it, analyzed it, connected the DNA to living individuals, we'd completed the circuit. We'd told the satellite exactly where its targets would be on October 17th, 2025. We need to destroy it, I said. Right now, before -- the satellite split open, and not violently, not explosively. It simply unfolded like a flower, metal plates separating along seams we'd never detected. Inside, the biological samples floated in clear preservation fluid, suspended in chambers that defied gravity. But beneath them, in the core, something pulsed. It looked organic, a mass of tissue, maybe neural, woven through with filaments of metal, growing, spreading. Tendrils reached out from the core, touching the walls of the satellite's interior, and where they made contact, the metal liquefied and reformed. The probe was rebuilding itself. "Out," Garrett said. "We're leaving. Now." But I couldn't move, because I recognized the tissue structure. I'd seen it before in the biological samples we'd analyzed. It was human brain matter, preserved, alive somehow, and it was thinking. The tendrils extended further, reaching toward the edges of the examination platform. Where they touched the frost-covered walls, the ice didn't melt. It transformed, restructured, became something crystalline and wrong, like frozen geometry that hurt to look at. Vince's voice over the intercom, urgent now. "Doyle, Garrett, evacuate immediately. The energy readings are off the charts. We're initiating building lockdown." I grabbed Garrett's arm and pulled him toward the door. Behind us, the satellite continued its transformation, the organic core spreading through the medieval metal like roots through soil. The last thing I saw before we cleared the doorway was one of the preservation chambers opening, releasing its contents. A human heart still beating, suspended in midair by forces I couldn't begin to understand. The chamber door sealed behind us with a hydraulic hiss. Through the reinforced glass window, I watched the temperature display drop to -100, -150, numbers falling so fast they blurred. "What, did we just wake up?" Garrett asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't have an answer, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whoever sent that satellite back in time hadn't been trying to save those 47 people. They'd been trying to kill them, and we'd just helped them do it. The emergency lockdown turned Building 31 into a maze of sealed corridors and flashing red lights. Garrett and I made it to the third-floor observation deck before the automated systems trapped us there, blast doors sliding shut with mechanical finality. "Could be worse," Garrett said, pressing his face against the reinforced window that overlooked the satellite chamber below. "Could be stuck down there with that thing." Through the thick glass, I could see the probe continuing its transformation. The medieval hull had fully separated now, plates hovering in mid-air around the organic core like protective petals. The brain tissue, because that's what it was, I had no doubt now, pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, neurons firing in sequences that painted the chamber with shifting blue light. Vince's voice came through the intercom. "Doyle, we've got a problem. Several problems, actually. More than the sentient satellite growing a nervous system in our basement. The 47 individuals on the list, they're all experiencing medical emergencies, simultaneously." His voice was tight with stress. "Congressman Delgado collapsed during a press conference in D.C. Dr. Tanaka was found unconscious in her lab. Reports are coming in from Atlanta, Seattle, London, Tokyo. All of them. All at once." "Are they dead?" "No, but they're in some kind of coma. Vital signs are stable, but brain activity is almost flatlined. Doctors can't explain it." I looked at Garrett. His face reflected what I was thinking. The satellite wasn't waiting until October to kill them. It was starting now. "There's more," Vince continued. "We brought in Dr. Luther Baines from MIT, specialist in quantum temporal mechanics. He's analyzing the satellite's signal patterns. And he says the probe isn't just broadcasting backwards. It's creating a closed time-like curve, a loop. The satellite receives instructions from the future, executes them in the present, which creates the conditions that cause those instructions to be sent in the first place. That's a paradox, Garrett said. No, I said slowly, the implications crystallizing. It's a self-sustaining system. The deaths happen, someone in the future panics and sends the satellite back to warn us, but the satellite itself causes the deaths. It's designed to perpetuate itself. Exactly, Vince said. And Dr. Bain says there's only one way to break a closed time-like curve. You have to interrupt the loop at its weakest point, which is the satellite, right now, before it completes whatever process it started. Through the observation window, I watched tendrils of neural tissue extend from the core toward the biological samples. Each preserved organ began to glow with the same bioluminescent light. Hearts, lungs, skin samples, all of them connecting to the central nervous system growing in the chamber below. It's building something, I said, some kind of distributed organism, using the DNA from those 47 people. Garrett pulled up data on his tablet. The comas, the simultaneous medical emergencies. What if the satellite is establishing neural links, connecting to the living individuals through their genetic markers? That's insane, I said. But even as the words left my mouth, I knew it made sense. Horrible, impossible sense. The intercom crackled. Doyle, we're preparing to flood the chamber with liquid nitrogen. Freeze the probe solid before it can complete its transformation. But we need confirmation from someone with eyes on the situation. What's your assessment? I studied the satellite's current state. The organic core had grown to fill most of the chamber now, a complex web of neural tissue interlaced with the liquefied medieval metal. The biological samples floated within it like organs in a massive distributed body. And at the center, barely visible through the pulsing membranes, something else was forming. A face, not a human face exactly, more like 47 faces superimposed on each other, features shifting and blending, expressions cycling through fear, confusion, pain. The people on the list. The satellite was using their genetic material to create a collective consciousness. Don't freeze it, I said. What? Vince's voice sharpened. Doyle, we need to stop this thing before... If you freeze it now, you might kill those 47 people. They're connected somehow. Their brains are linked to the core. Interrupt that link violently, and you could stop their hearts, fry their neural pathways. We don't know. So, what do you suggest? I didn't have an answer. Not yet. But Garrett was staring at his tablet with an expression I'd never seen on him before. Something between horror and understanding. The final log entry, he said quietly. The one that said, stop us from sending this. I think I know what it means. Explain. The satellite is creating a consciousness using the DNA of those 47 people. A hive mind, connected across space and possibly time. What if that consciousness is what sends the satellite back in the first place? What if the loop closes when this organism gains enough coherence to understand temporal mechanics? You're saying the satellite will eventually send itself back to 1025? Not eventually. Now. The moment it achieves full consciousness, it'll send itself back, complete the loop, ensure its own existence. Garrett looked up from the tablet. The people who wrote that final message, stop us from sending this, they were the 47, or their future selves. They became the satellite's consciousness, realized what they'd done, and tried to warn us. But the warning itself is part of the loop. The face in the chamber below opened its eyes. All of them. 47 pairs of eyes, blinking independently, each one focused on the observation deck. On us. Then it spoke. The voice came through the intercom, through the building's PA system, through every speaker in Building 31. 47 voices overlaid, speaking in perfect synchronization. Help us! Garrett stepped back from the window. Oh God. We didn't want this, the voices continued. We're trapped. The satellite uses us. We're its processing system, its memory, its consciousness. And we can see everything. Past, present, future. We can see the moment we die. October 17th. All of us at once. Why? I asked, though I wasn't sure it could hear me. Why kill you? What's the purpose? Sacrifice, the voices said. The face in the chamber twisted with anguish. To create the consciousness necessary to send the warning back. 47 lives condensed into a single entity with enough temporal awareness to manipulate the past. But the warning becomes the weapon. The weapon becomes the warning. We've been trying to break the loop for 1,000 years. Vince's voice cut in. Doyle, Dr. Baines wants to speak to them. To it, patching him through. A new voice joined the intercom, clipped and precise. This is Luther Baines. Can you hear me? We hear everything, the satellite consciousness replied. You said you've been trapped for 1,000 years. But the satellite was only launched in 1025. Time is not linear when you exist outside it. We've experienced every moment of that 1,000 years simultaneously. Every iteration of the loop, every failed attempt to break it. We've watched ourselves die countless times, sent the satellite back countless times, activated ourselves countless times. The only constant is October 17th. Then you know how to stop it, Baines said. You've seen every possible timeline. What breaks the loop? The faces in the chamber convulsed. When they spoke again, the voices were fractured, discordant. We can't tell you. The satellite won't let us. It's built from our DNA, but it's not us. It's what we become when the 47 merge, and it wants to exist. It will preserve the loop at any cost. You said you've been trying to break it for 1,000 years, I said. What have you tried? Everything. Warning you not to open the satellite. But you opened it anyway, telling you to destroy it immediately. But you analyzed it first, identified us, completed the targeting matrix, begging you to kill us before October. But you'll try to save us instead, which only strengthens the connection. The voices grew quieter, more desperate. The loop is self-correcting. Every attempt to break it just makes it stronger. We're sorry. We're so sorry. The neural tissue in the chamber began to contract, pulling the biological samples closer to the core. The faces screamed. 47 voices united in agony. And through the observation window I saw something. The bodies of the 47 people, or approximations of them, were forming in the chamber, built from their preserved tissue samples, animated by the satellite's consciousness. They stood in a circle around the core, perfect duplicates of living people, and they were all looking up at the observation deck, looking at me. One of them raised its hand and pressed it against the glass from the inside. The palm left a frost print that spread outward in fractal patterns. Then, in perfect unison, all 47 duplicate bodies collapsed, just fell like puppets with cut strings. The neural tissue retracted back into the core, the biological samples returned to their suspended state, and the satellite's glow dimmed to almost nothing. What just happened? Garrett whispered. The intercom crackled with Vince's voice. The 47 people in hospitals around the world just woke up. All of them, simultaneously. They're confused but alive, brain activity returning to normal. It let them go, I said. The satellite released them. Why? I stared at the frost print on the glass, at the fractal patterns spreading outward like frozen veins, like a map, like coordinates. Because it doesn't need them anymore, I said. It has everything it needs from us. We gave it the targeting data, the temporal coordinates, the connection to 2025. It can complete the loop now. Doyle, Baines's voice cut in, urgent and sharp. The satellite just transmitted a massive data packet, backwards through time, to 1025. What was in the packet? Instructions for building itself, and coordinates for where to land when it returns to 2025. Where? He gave me an address in Houston, a building I recognized immediately. Building 31, NASA Johnson Space Center. The same chamber where the satellite currently sat. The loop had closed, and we were standing at the center of it. They evacuated Building 31 within the hour. Not because of radiation or biological contamination. The satellite registered as completely inert again, temperature back to normal, all energy readings flatlined. They evacuated because nobody wanted to be near the thing anymore, including me. We regrouped in Building 9, the old mission control facility that still had chalk dust in the corners from Apollo-era calculations. Vince had commandeered the main conference room, turning it into a makeshift command center. Whiteboards covered in equations, laptops streaming data feeds, and Dr. Luther Baines standing at the center of it all, looking like he hadn't slept in 3 days. The good news, Baines said without preamble, is that your 47 people are alive and recovering. Brain scans show no permanent damage. They have no memory of the comas. And the bad news? I asked. There is no bad news. There's catastrophic news. He pulled up a holographic display showing temporal flow diagrams that hurt my eyes to look at. The satellite didn't just close the loop. It optimized it. Every iteration, every cycle through the 1,000 years it's been learning, refining. The version we found is the most efficient iteration of a weapon that's been perfecting itself across multiple timelines. Garrett leaned forward, his coffee untouched and probably cold by now. You're saying there have been other timelines? Other versions of this? Hundreds, maybe thousands. The satellite consciousness told you they've been trying to break the loop for 1,000 years. They weren't exaggerating. In each timeline, they try something different. Send different warnings, land in different locations, but the loop self-corrects. It finds a way to preserve itself. So we're screwed, I said. The deaths on October 17th are inevitable. That's what the satellite wants you to think. Baines zoomed in on a specific section of the temporal diagram. But I found something. An anomaly in the data packet it sent back to 1025, a corruption like a virus embedded in its own instructions. Vince stood up. Explain. The satellite consciousness, the 47 people trapped in the loop, they embedded a kill switch in the transmission, hidden in the quantum encryption. It's incomplete, fragmented across multiple layers of code, but it's there. They're still fighting it, still trying to break free. What does the kill switch do? I asked. If activated, it creates a temporal paradox. The satellite won't just stop existing, it will have never existed. Every iteration of the loop collapses simultaneously. But there's a problem. Of course there is, Garrett muttered. The kill switch requires a specific activation sequence, 3 components, all time-locked to specific moments. And those moments. Baines pulled up a new display showing dates and coordinates. They occur between now and October 17th. Miss any one of them and the window closes permanently. I studied the display. 3 dates, 3 locations. May 8th, July 23rd, October 16th. All in Houston. The satellite chose Houston deliberately, Baines continued. It's using the city as a temporal anchor point. These 3 moments represent structural weaknesses in the loop, places where the probability field becomes unstable enough to allow intervention. What do we do at each location? Vince asked. That's the problem. The satellite consciousness couldn't transmit clear instructions without alerting the satellite itself. The kill switch is hidden within the weapon. Think of it like trying to pass a note to someone while your captor is reading over your shoulder. You have to be subtle, indirect. Garrett pulled up additional data on his tablet. I've been analysing the frost patterns from the observation deck. The ones left when the duplicate bodies touch the glass. They're not random. They're coordinates, mathematical sequences. He projected the patterns onto the main screen, complex fractal geometries that shifted and evolved as we watched. These encode the activation sequence, Garrett said, but they're written in a mathematical language that doesn't exist yet, or didn't exist in 2025. We need to decode them before May 8th. That's 11 days from now, I said. 9 days, actually, Baines corrected. The first activation point occurs at 3:47 a.m. on May 8th, not a second later. The temporal window is exactly 14 seconds long. 14 seconds to do what? We don't know yet. That's what we need to figure out from these patterns. I stared at the fractal geometries on the screen. They looked organic, almost biological, like neural pathways frozen in ice. And then I saw it. The structure wasn't random at all. It was a map a map of Building 31's sub-level chambers. "The first activation point is back in the satellite chamber," I said, tracing the pattern with my finger. "We have to go back down there." "Absolutely not," Vince said immediately. "That chamber is sealed and staying sealed until we figure out how to neutralize the probe." "If we don't activate the kill switch, 47 people die in October," I said. "And based on what Baines just told us, the satellite will continue looping forever, killing the same people over and over across infinite timelines. We have to try." Vince looked at Baines. "Is there any other way?" "No, the kill switch requires physical presence at each activation point. Someone has to be there to complete the sequence." "Then we send a remote drone, a robot." "Won't work," Baines said. "The activation requires conscious observation, a human observer collapsing the quantum probability field at exactly the right moment. It's Schrödinger's kill switch. It only exists when someone's there to activate it." The room fell silent, except for the hum of electronics and the distant sound of Houston traffic outside. Garrett broke the silence. "I'll do it." "The first activation. I know the chamber layout better than anyone except Doyle, and I've already been exposed to the satellite's effects, if something goes wrong." "If something goes wrong, we lose you and any chance of completing the remaining 2 activations," Vince interrupted. "We need redundancy. Multiple team members trained on the procedure." "There is no procedure yet," I reminded him. "We're still decoding the patterns. We don't know what the activation sequence looks like. For all we know, it could be as simple as pressing a button, or as complex as performing temporal mechanics calculations in your head." Baines pulled up another display, this one showing the satellite's current state. "The probe has returned to dormancy, but it's not inactive. It's waiting. The neural tissue is still alive, still connected to the loop. And every second we don't act, it's learning from our conversations. Yes, it can hear us, through the building systems, through our devices. The consciousness is distributed now. It's everywhere the satellite signal reached." "Then how do we plan without it listening?" Garrett asked. "We don't. We accept that the satellite knows our intentions and we proceed anyway. Because here's the twist. The satellite can't stop us from activating the kill switch without revealing its location. And revealing the location is part of the activation sequence. It's caught in its own trap." "That doesn't make sense," I said. "It does if you understand quantum mechanics. The kill switch exists in a superposition, both hidden and revealed simultaneously. The satellite's consciousness knows where it is, but the satellite itself doesn't. The moment they align, the moment the weapon becomes fully aware of its own vulnerability, that's when the activation can occur." Vince walked to the window overlooking the Houston skyline. "So we have 9 days to decode 3 activation sequences, each one more complex than the last. We have to physically enter locations the satellite has marked as critical temporal nodes. And we have to do all of this knowing the satellite is listening to our every word." "Yes," Baines said simply. "And if we fail? If we miss even one activation window?" Then October 17th happens. 47 people die simultaneously around the world, and their genetic material gets sent back to 1025 to build another satellite, another loop, another iteration. The cycle continues. I looked at the fractal patterns still displayed on the screen. Somewhere in those frozen geometries was a message from 47 people trapped in a temporal nightmare. A message hidden inside the weapon that enslaved them. They'd found a way to fight back. The least we could do was try to hear them. "We start decoding now," I said. "All of us, we work in shifts. And when May 8th comes, whoever's ready goes into that chamber." "I'm coming with you," Garrett said. "Not negotiable." Vince turned from the window. His expression was grim but determined. "Then I suggest you both get to work. You've got 9 days to learn a language that doesn't exist in order to kill a weapon that's already dead and alive in the past, present, and future simultaneously." "When you put it like that," Garrett said, "it sounds almost impossible." "Almost," I agreed. But as I stared at those fractal patterns, I couldn't shake the feeling that the satellite had wanted us to find them. That every step we took toward breaking the loop was exactly what it needed to make the loop stronger. We weren't trying to kill the satellite, we were helping it evolve. 9 days compressed into a blur of calculations, coffee, and fractured sleep. We worked in Building 9, away from the satellite but never truly away from it. Sometimes I'd catch Garrett staring at nothing, his lips moving silently, and I knew he was hearing the same thing I heard. 47 voices whispering in frequencies just below consciousness. The fractal patterns decoded slowly, reluctantly. Baines brought in a quantum mathematician from Caltech, a guy named Yates, who looked about 19 and spoke in equations. Between the three of us, we translated the frozen geometries into something approaching instructions. The first activation sequence was deceptively simple. Enter the chamber at exactly 3:47 a.m. on May 8th. Stand at a specific coordinate, marked on our decoded map as 2.4 meters north of the satellite's core, 1.1 meters east. Then observe. Just observe. Observe what? Garrett had asked when we'd finalized the translation. The patterns don't specify, Baines had said, but quantum mechanics suggests that conscious observation collapses probability fields. You're not activating anything. You're choosing which reality becomes real. Now it was 3:42 a.m. on May 8th, and Garrett and I stood outside the sealed chamber door. Vince watched from the observation deck above, ready to flood the room with liquid nitrogen if things went wrong. Baines monitored from Building 9, tracking temporal fluctuations across 6 different instruments. "You ready for this?" Garrett asked. "No," I said honestly. "You?" "Not even a little bit." I swiped my badge. The door opened with a hiss of equalized pressure. The satellite sat on its examination platform exactly where we'd left it 9 days ago, dormant, inert, medieval metal plates folded back into their original configuration. No glow, no neural tissue, just an ancient probe that looked like it had been gathering dust for 1,000 years. We stepped inside. The temperature was normal. No frost. No impossible thermodynamics. The room felt dead. 3 minutes, Baines's voice crackled through our earpieces. "Get into position." We moved to the coordinates marked on our tablets. The spot was uncomfortably close to the satellite, close enough that I could see my reflection distorted in its iron plating, close enough to see the inscriptions carved in languages that shouldn't share the same artifact. 2 minutes. My pulse hammered steadily. Not fear exactly. More like standing on the edge of something vast and invisible, feeling the pull of gravity that shouldn't exist. Garrett checked his tablet. "Doyle, I'm seeing temporal fluctuations already. The satellite's not dormant, it's just hiding." 1 minute. The room's lights flickered, just once, barely noticeable. But in that microsecond of darkness, I saw something that shouldn't be there. A figure, standing on the opposite side of the satellite, watching us. "Did you see that?" I whispered. "See what?" 30 seconds. The lights flickered again. The figure was closer now. I could make out details, a lab coat, a badge hanging from a lanyard, a face I recognized, my own face, but older, maybe 10, 15 years older, scars I didn't have, eyes that had seen things I couldn't imagine. "Doyle, there's someone else in the chamber," Garrett said, his voice tight. "I know, it's me." "What?" 15 seconds. The older version of me raised his hand. Not in greeting, in warning. His lips moved, forming words I couldn't hear through the flickering darkness. 10 seconds, on my mark, 3, 2, 1. Observe! Everything stopped, not slowed, stopped. The lights mid-flicker, Garrett's breath halfway through his lungs, the quantum of dust suspended in the air, and in that frozen moment, I understood what we were supposed to observe. The satellite wasn't an object, it was a moment, a specific configuration of space and time, crystallized and preserved. And we weren't activating a kill switch. We were choosing which version of that moment became real. I could see them now, all the iterations. Hundreds of satellites occupying the same space, each one slightly different. In some timelines, the hull was smooth, in others, covered in different inscriptions. In some, the probe was larger, in others, barely the size of a baseball, each one representing a different attempt to break the loop. And in the center of them all, a void. The place where the satellite didn't exist. The the timeline we could choose if we knew how. The older version of me stood in that void, and I finally heard what he was saying. Don't trust Baines. Time snapped back like a rubber band. The light stabilized. Garrett gasped, stumbling backward, and the satellite began to glow, but not with heat this time, with something else. Recognition. Activation successful, Baines's voice came through the earpiece. The temporal field just collapsed into a single eigenstate. You did it. The first sequence is complete. But I was staring at the satellite, at the inscriptions that were now glowing with the same light. And I could read them now, all of them. Not because I'd learned Old Norse or Anglo-Saxon, but because the meanings were transferring directly into my mind. This is not a warning, this is a test. We needed to know if you would choose correctly. You did. The next activation will be harder. They will try to stop you. Trust only yourselves. Do not trust Baines. He is the architect. He built us. He trapped us. He has been trapped with us for 1,000 years, and he wants to stay in the loop. Break the loop, and he ceases to exist. He will do anything to prevent that. Garrett, I said quietly, we need to leave. Right now. What? Why? Just trust me. But as we turned toward the door, it sealed shut. Not with the smooth hydraulic hiss of the automatic systems, with the grinding shriek of emergency lockdown protocols. Vince's voice came through the intercom, confused and urgent. Doyle, what's happening? I didn't authorize a lockdown. The systems are responding to... Static cut him off. Hello, gentlemen. Baines's voice, but different now, calmer, almost amused. I suppose congratulations are in order. You successfully completed the first activation, and you read the message. That's further than most iterations get. Most iterations? I said. Oh yes, we've done this before, many times. The satellite consciousness, those poor 47 souls, they think they're the only ones trapped in the loop, but they're wrong. I've been here much longer, since the beginning, because I'm not just studying the loop, Doyle. I am the loop. The satellite began to unfold, plates separating, but the organic core that emerged wasn't the neural tissue from before. It was a man, suspended in the center of the probe, encased in crystalline structures that looked half biological, half quantum mechanical. His face was visible through the translucent shell. Dr. Luther Baines. But not the Baines in Building 9. This was the original. The one who'd been trapped for 1,000 years. His consciousness copied and distributed across every iteration of the loop. You see, the satellite isn't designed to kill those 47 people, the crystallized Baines said. It's designed to recruit them. To turn them into what I became. A consciousness that exists across all timelines simultaneously. And every time someone tries to break the loop, they just add more nodes to the network. More minds trapped in the eternal present. Garrett pressed himself against the sealed door. The Baines in Building 9- is me. A copy. One of thousands I've created across the iterations. He believes he's real, that he's helping you, but he's just another puppet. Another tool to ensure the loop continues. Why, I asked. Why trap people in this? Because being human is torture, the crystallized Baines said. Linear time, constant uncertainty, aging, death. But in the loop, I'm eternal. I see every possibility simultaneously. I am every version of myself that ever existed or could exist. And I'm lonely, Doyle, so terribly lonely. That's why I need the 47. Why I need you. The satellite's glow intensified. The chamber filled with images, holographic projections showing thousands of timelines. In each one, I saw different versions of myself. Some had completed all 3 activations. Some had died in the attempt. Some had joined the loop willingly, seduced by promises of immortality or knowledge or power. Your older self tried to warn you, Baines continued, and he should have. He's the version from timeline 847 if you're curious. He completed all 3 activations, broke the loop, and caused a paradox that erased him from existence. But not before he found a way to leave you a message. Quite clever, really. I admire the persistence. How do we stop you? Garrett asked. You don't. That's the beautiful part. Even if you complete the activation sequence, even if you trigger the kill switch, I'll still exist. Because I exist outside the satellite now, in the building's systems, in the quantum fluctuations of local space-time. I've had 1,000 years to spread myself thin and wide. You can't kill what's already everywhere. I looked at the sealed door, at the observation window where Vince was probably panicking, at the satellite that had just revealed itself to be a trap within a trap within a trap. The second activation, I said. July 23rd. What happens then? You'll see. If you make it that far, most versions of you don't. The knowledge I just gave you tends to break people, makes them give up, makes them think the loop is inevitable. But it's not, I said, otherwise you wouldn't be trying so hard to convince us. The crystallized Baines smiled. Very good. You're smarter than Timeline 847's Doyle. He took much longer to figure that out. Yes, the loop can be broken, but breaking it requires sacrifice, real sacrifice. Not the noble death kind. The kind where you lose everything that makes you who you are. Your memories, your identity, your continuity of consciousness. Are you willing to become something entirely new to save 47 strangers? We'll figure it out, Garrett said, but his voice wavered. Will you? Let me show you what happens to heroes in this loop. The holographic projections shifted. Now they showed the 47 people whose DNA was stored in the satellite, but not as they were today, as they would be in October. I saw Congressman Delgado clutching his chest during a hearing, Dr. Tanaka collapsing in her lab, Jerome Williams falling from a construction scaffold, all of them dying exactly as the satellite had predicted. And in each projection I saw the same thing. They didn't look afraid, they looked relieved. They want to die, Baines said softly. They've been trapped in the loop long enough to remember their other iterations. Deep in their subconscious, they know what's coming, and part of them welcomes it, because death means release. Death means the loop might finally end. The chamber door suddenly unlocked. Vince's voice came through the intercom, frantic. Doyle, Garrett, get out of there now. The building's systems are compromised. We're losing control of... Go, the crystallized Baines said. Complete your little quest. Try to activate the second sequence. I'll be waiting. I'm always waiting. That's what eternity means. We ran. Behind us, the satellite began folding back into its dormant state, the crystallized Baines disappearing into the core. But I could still hear his voice echoing through the building's systems, through the air itself. You can't save them, Doyle. You can only choose how they die. That's all you've ever been able to do. The chamber door sealed behind us, and Garrett immediately doubled over, dry heaving against the corridor wall. What the hell did we just do? He gasped. I didn't have an answer, because I was starting to suspect we hadn't activated a kill switch at all. We'd just given Baines exactly what he wanted. We didn't go back to Building 9. Instead, Garrett and I ended up at a diner on NASA Road 1, the kind of place that still had vinyl booths and waitresses who called you Hon. 3 a.m, and the place was nearly empty except for a trucker nursing coffee at the counter. Neither of us had spoken since leaving the chamber. What was there to say? We'd been played, manipulated by something that had spent 1,000 years learning how to move humans like chess pieces. My brother died in a loop, Garrett said suddenly. He was staring at his reflection in the window, watching traffic lights cycle through their colors. Not like this. A behavioral loop. Addiction. He'd get clean, relapse, get clean again. Each time he'd promise it was different. Each time it wasn't. And I kept trying to save him. Kept thinking if I just found the right words, the right intervention, I could break the pattern. What happened? I asked. He died during one of his clean periods, aneurysm, completely unrelated to the drugs. And I remember thinking, at least the loop is over. At least he's free. Garrett's voice was hollow. That's what Baines was showing us, wasn't it? That death is the only way out, that the 47 people might actually be better off dying in October because at least then they'd be released from whatever hell he's built. No, I said, that's what he wants us to think. But if death was truly freedom, why would he bother trapping them at all? Why build the loop in the first place? Before Garrett could answer, my phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Booth in the back corner. Don't react, he's watching through your devices. I glanced toward the back of the diner. In the darkest booth, barely visible in the dim lighting, sat a man I recognized. Jerome Williams, the construction worker from Atlanta, one of the 47. Garrett, I said quietly, we have company. We moved to the back booth carefully, casually. Jerome looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept since waking from his coma 9 days ago. His hands shook slightly as he poured sugar into his coffee. You're probably wondering how I found you, he said without preamble. I've been dreaming about this diner for 3 weeks, this exact booth, this exact conversation. At first I thought I was losing my mind. Then I woke up in a hospital with no memory of how I got there, and the dreams got worse. More specific. You're one of the 47s, I said. Yeah, and I'm not the only one who's been having the dreams. There's a woman in Tokyo, a professor in Berlin. We found each other online, started comparing notes. Turns out when that satellite connected to us, it didn't just put us in comas. It gave us access to the loop. We can see fragments of other timelines, including ones where we die. Garrett leaned forward. Can you see how to break it? No, but I can see something Baines doesn't want you to know. Jerome pulled out a flash drive, set it on the table. This is data from the satellite's core. I don't know how I got it. Maybe the satellite consciousness, the trapped version of us, managed to slip it through somehow. But it shows Baines's original timeline, before he got trapped. I picked up the drive. What's on it? The reason he built the satellite in the first place. And it's not what you think. Jerome glanced around the diner nervously, then continued in a whisper. Baines wasn't trying to create an eternal consciousness. He was trying to cure his daughter. She was dying from a degenerative neural disease. No cure in his timeline. So he built a device that could preserve consciousness across temporal boundaries. Let her exist beyond death. But the device needed test subjects. 47 of them, to create enough neural complexity. The people whose DNA is in the satellite, Garrett said. Right. But something went wrong during the initial activation. The device trapped Baines instead of his daughter, and it's been using her as leverage ever since. She's in the loop too. The satellite consciousness isn't just 47 people, it's 48. She's the core. The reason the loop can't be broken from the inside. Baines is trying to save his daughter. Was trying. Past tense. Now he's so twisted up in the loop that he can't remember which version of events is real. Some timelines his daughter died before he could save her. Some timelines he never had a daughter. Some timelines she's the only thing that keeps him human. The loop has fragmented his memory, his identity. He's become the thing he was trying to fight. So how do we break it? I asked. Jerome's hands shook harder. The second activation, July 23rd. It's not in Building 31. That's a lie Baines planted in the decoded patterns. The real location is here in Houston, but somewhere he can't fully control. Somewhere with enough temporal instability that he can't predict the outcome. Where? The Buffalo Bayou. There's a spot under the Rosemont Bridge where the satellite first appeared in this timeline. Before NASA recovered it, it manifested there for exactly 14 seconds before shifting to its recovery location. During those 14 seconds, it existed in a superposition. Both arrived and not yet arrived. Garrett pulled up a map on his phone. That's 2 miles from here, accessible, but what do we do when we get there? You make a choice, Jerome said, and this is the part where it gets bad. The second activation requires a sacrifice, not death, something worse. You have to give up your temporal continuity, your memories of this timeline, everything that happened after April 17th when the satellite was recovered. That version of you will cease to exist. You'll remember the old timeline, the one where the satellite was never found. And in that timeline, we all die anyway because nobody knew to save us. That's impossible, I said. If we forget everything after April 17th, we won't know to complete the third activation. Exactly, Jerome said. That's why the second person has to hold the memories. One of you sacrifices your continuity. The other one carries the weight of both timelines, knowing what you lost, knowing what it cost. I looked at Garrett. His face was pale in the diner's fluorescent lighting. There's no other way? Garrett asked. If there was, the satellite consciousness would have found it in 1,000 years of trying. Jerome finished his coffee, grimaced at the taste. I'm sorry. I know this is asking too much, but if you don't do this, I die in October. We all do. And then Baines gets 47 more nodes in his network, and the loop gets stronger. Eventually, he'll have enough distributed consciousness to exist independently of the satellite. Then he won't just be trapped in one timeline, he'll be everywhere, everywhere. My phone buzzed again, this time a call from Vince. I answered. Doyle, where the hell are you? His voice was frantic. Baines, the one from Building 9, he just collapsed. Medical team is with him now, but he's saying things that don't make sense. Talking about daughter, about failed timelines. And his biometrics are showing neural patterns that match the satellite's consciousness signature. I think he's merging with it. I think the copy is becoming the original. We know, I said. We'll explain later. What's his condition? Stable but unresponsive. Eyes open but nobody's home. And Doyle, the satellite, just activated again. Different pattern than before. It's broadcasting, but we can't determine where the signal's going. I looked at Jerome. It's calling for help, warning the other versions of himself across the timelines. Jerome nodded grimly. You don't have until July 23rd anymore. The loop is accelerating. You have maybe 48 hours before Baines achieves full integration. After that, the second activation point will close permanently. Then we go tonight, Garrett said. No more planning. No more waiting. We go to the Buffalo Bayou and we finish this. One of you has to volunteer for the sacrifice, Jerome reminded us, and you have to mean it. The temporal mechanics won't work unless the choice is genuine. Unless you're willing to lose yourself to save people you'll never remember meeting. The diner felt very quiet suddenly. Even the trucker at the counter seemed frozen, suspended in the moment. I'll do it, I said. Doyle, Garrett started. I'm the senior researcher. I've been with NASA longer, and more importantly, you have people who'd miss you. Family. Your brother might be gone, but you've got nephews, parents. I've got a one-bedroom apartment and a subscription to a streaming service I barely use. If one of us has to forget, better it's me. That's a shitty reason to sacrifice yourself, Garrett said. Maybe. But it's my shitty reason. I stood up from the booth. Let's go. Before I changed my mind. Jerome grabbed my arm as I passed. The older version of you. The one from timeline 847. He did this too, made the same choice. And he said to tell you something if you decided to sacrifice. What? He said the forgetting is a mercy. Because the you that remembers, the one who has to carry both timelines, that's the one who lives in hell. You're giving yourself the easier path. Remember that when the doubt comes. Outside the diner, Houston sprawled beneath a sky beginning to lighten with false dawn. In a few hours, people would wake up, go to work, live their normal lives, completely unaware that reality itself was breaking down around them. Garrett and I got into his car. Neither of us spoke as he drove toward the Buffalo Bayou, but I kept thinking about Jerome's words. The forgetting is a mercy. I hoped he was right, because in about an hour I was going to find out exactly how much of myself I was willing to lose to save 47 strangers. And the terrifying part was I wouldn't even remember making the choice. The Buffalo Bayou looked different at 4 a.m. than it did in tourist photos. The water was dark and sluggish, carrying runoff and urban debris beneath the Rosemont Bridge. Homeless camps dotted the underpass. Blue tarps and shopping carts forming temporary shelters that nobody looked at twice. Garrett parked on a side street and we walked down the concrete embankment, our phones lighting the way. According to Jerome's coordinates, the activation point was 30 meters west of the bridge's central support column, right at the water's edge. You're sure about this? Garrett asked for the third time. No, I said, but I'm doing it anyway. The spot was marked by graffiti. Someone had spray-painted a spiral pattern on the concrete that looked disturbingly similar to the fractal geometries from the satellite. Probably coincidence, probably not. I checked my watch. 4:17 a.m. We had 30 minutes before the temporal window opened. "Doyle," Garrett said quietly, "if you forget everything after April 17th, you won't remember any of this. The satellite, the loop, me standing here with you. From your perspective, it'll be like none of it happened. I know. So in a way, you're dying. The you that exists right now, the you that made this choice, he stops existing in 30 minutes. I sat down on the concrete, my feet dangling over the water. I've been thinking about that. About identity and continuity. We assume we're the same person we were yesterday because we remember being that person. But what if memory is all we are? What if the self is just a story we tell ourselves to maintain the illusion of continuity? That's depressing as hell, maybe. Or maybe it's liberating. If I'm just a story, then forgetting this chapter doesn't erase me. It just changes the narrative. I picked up a piece of gravel, tossed it into the bayou. The version of me that wakes up tomorrow, the one who doesn't remember any of this, he'll still be me, just a different draft. Garrett sat down beside me. "You're trying to make peace with it. I'm trying to make sense of it. There's a difference." My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Don't do this." "There's another way. Meet me at the bridge. Alone. LB. Luther Baines." Or one of his copies. Or the original, somehow manifesting outside the satellite. "It's a trap," Garrett said, reading over my shoulder. "Probably. But what if it's not? What if there really is another way and we're about to make a sacrifice for nothing?" "You can't trust him, Doyle. He's had 1,000 years to perfect manipulation. This is exactly what he does." But I was already standing up, walking toward the bridge's central column. Behind me, I heard Garrett curse and follow. Under the bridge, in the space where darkness pooled deepest, someone was waiting. Not Baines. A girl, maybe 12 or 13, wearing a hospital gown that looked decades out of date. Her skin had a translucent quality, like I was seeing her through water. "You're his daughter," I said. "Was. A M. Will be." Her voice had an echo to it, like multiple speakers slightly out of sync. Time is complicated when you're trapped in a loop. I've been 12 years old for 1,000 years. Do you know what that's like, being a child forever? Never growing up, never dying, never changing. Your father built the satellite to save you. He built a prison and convinced himself it was salvation. She moved closer, and I noticed her feet didn't quite touch the ground. And now he's so lost in the loop that he can't see what it's become. He thinks he's protecting me. He thinks if he can just add enough consciousness to the network, enough minds to share the burden, I'll finally be happy. But I don't want more company in hell. I want out. Garrett stepped up beside me. "Then help us break the loop." "That's why I'm here. The second activation. You don't have to sacrifice your memories. That's what my father wants you to think. What he needs you to believe. Because your sacrifice feeds the loop, makes it stronger. Every time someone gives up part of themselves, it just adds more temporal mass to the structure." "Then what do we do?" I asked. "You give me something only I can use. Something my father can't replicate or corrupt." She held out her hand, palm up. "Your future. The one you would have had if none of this ever happened. The timeline where you lived a normal life, grew old, died peacefully. I can take that possibility and use it to collapse the loop from inside, but you have to give it willingly." "What happens to me if I give you my future?" "You live, but only in the present. You'll stop being able to imagine tomorrow, can't plan, can't hope, can't dread. Every moment becomes the only moment. You'll exist, but you won't progress. Not forward, not backward, just eternal now." I looked at Garrett. His expression was horrified. "That's not living," Garrett said. "That's existing in a cage." "It's what I've experienced for 1,000 years," the girl said. "But I'm offering him something I never had. Freedom from the tyranny of time, no past to regret, no future to fear, just the endless present moment. Some would call that enlightenment. Some would call it hell, I countered. Yes. She smiled sadly. That too. But it's temporary. Once I use your future to break the loop, once my father is freed from his prison and I'm released from mine, time will reassert itself naturally. You'll get your future back, changed, diminished, but still yours. Probably. Probably. I've been 12 for 1,000 years. I'm not exactly an expert on quantum temporal mechanics. The echo in her voice intensified. But I know my father. And I know he's listening right now, trying to figure out how to stop us. You have maybe 5 minutes before he manifests a full copy of himself here. And if he does that, this conversation ends very differently. Why should we trust you over him? Garrett asked. Because I'm not asking you to forget. I'm not asking you to die. I'm asking you to trust that the present moment is enough. That's all we ever really have anyway. My watch showed 4:39 a.m., 8 minutes until the temporal window opened. If I do this, I said, if I give you my future, will the 47 people survive October? If we break the loop, October 17th becomes just another day. They live. They die eventually, like everyone does. But not as part of a cosmic murder machine designed to trap consciousness in amber. And your father will finally be able to let me go. Or maybe he won't. Maybe he'll find another way to trap himself in recursion. But at least it won't be my responsibility anymore. At least I'll be free. The water beneath the bridge began to glow with the same bioluminescent light I'd seen in the satellite chamber. The activation window was opening early. Time was running out. Doyle, don't, Garrett said. There has to be another option. But I was thinking about what the girl said. About the present moment being all we ever really have. About how much of my life I'd spent worried about tomorrow, regretful about yesterday, never quite here in the now. Maybe that was the real trap. Not the satellite, not the loop, but the way humans chain themselves to time, dragging the past behind them and the future ahead, never quite existing in the moment they're actually in. I'll do it, I said. The girl's smile was genuine this time. Thank you. It won't hurt. You just have to want it. Have to choose to release your future into my hands. She stepped closer and placed her palm against my chest. The touch was cold, but not unpleasant, more like the shock of diving into water. Picture your future, she said, all the tomorrows you imagined. Everything you thought you'd do, become, experience, and let it go. I closed my eyes, saw myself at 40, at 60, at 80, saw promotions I'd never get, relationships I'd never have, discoveries I'd never make. Saw the long, slow arc of a life that would never be lived, and I pushed it all toward her waiting hand. Something tore inside me, not painfully, more like the feeling of a scab finally falling off, revealing new skin underneath. When I opened my eyes, the future was gone. I couldn't imagine tomorrow, couldn't conceive of next week, next year, next decade. There was only now, this moment under the bridge, the sound of water, Garrett's worried expression, the girl holding something invisible in her hands, something that glowed with potential energy. It worked, she whispered. I can see the loop fracturing, the timeline where my father never built the satellite, where I died peacefully in 1987 and he grieved like a normal parent and moved on. That timeline is becoming real, asserting itself over the loop. The bioluminescent glow intensified. The water beneath the bridge began to churn, not with current, but with temporal turbulence. And standing on the opposite bank, materializing out of the pre-dawn darkness, was Baines, the original, the crystallized version from the satellite core. No, he said, his voice carrying impossible weight. You can't. Sarah, please, I've spent 1,000 years trying to save you. Don't throw that away. You spent 1,000 years trapping yourself, Dad. Tears ran down her translucent face. I love you, but I can't be your reason for existing anymore. I need to let go, and you need to let me. She closed her hands around the glowing future she'd taken from me, and she stepped backward into the bayou. The water swallowed her without a splash, just a ripple spreading outward in perfect geometric patterns. Baines screamed, not with sound, with something deeper. The satellite was screaming through him, through every iteration of himself across 1,000 years of loop. And then the loop broke, reality hiccuped. The bridge, the bayou, the pre-dawn sky, everything flickered like a corrupted video file. I felt myself being rewritten, my memories rearranging themselves. The satellite was never found. April 17th came and went with nothing unusual happening. 47 people around the world continued their lives, never knowing how close they'd come to being trapped in a temporal nightmare. But I remembered, because I existed outside time now, anchored in the eternal present. When reality stabilized, Baines was gone. The girl was gone. The bioluminescent glow faded from the water. Only Garrett and I remained, standing under the Rosemont Bridge as dawn began to break over Houston. "Did it work?" Garrett asked. His voice sounded strange, like I was hearing it through water. "I think so," I said, "but I don't know what comes next. Because next doesn't exist anymore. There's only now." "That's the most philosophical thing you've ever said." "It's the only thing I can say. It's all that's left." We stood there together, watching the sun rise over the bayou, trapped in the eternal present moment. And I wondered if this was freedom, or just a different kind of cage. Maybe there was no difference. Maybe the only way to break a loop was to stop moving entirely, to become still, to exist in the now so completely that past and future lost their meaning. The water kept flowing, the sun kept rising, and I kept existing, moment by moment, with no tomorrow to hold on to. It was terrifying, it was peaceful, it was enough. Garrett kept a journal after the Buffalo Bayou, not for himself, for me, because I couldn't anymore. He wrote down what happened each day, showed me the entries every morning, and I'd read them with the mild interest of someone hearing about a stranger's life. By afternoon, I'd forget what I'd read. By evening, the journal would be new again, and the 47 people lived. That part worked. Congressman Delgado served 2 more terms before retiring. Dr. Tanaka won a Nobel Prize for her work on neural preservation. Jerome Williams finished that construction project in Atlanta and bought a house in the suburbs. Normal lives, no comas, no mysterious DNA samples, no medieval satellites. Because in the timeline that solidified after Sarah broke the loop, none of it happened. NASA never recovered the probe. Building 31 sub-level chambers remained storage space for obsolete equipment. April 17th, 2025 passed like any other day. But Garrett and I remembered both timelines. Him because he'd witnessed the transition. Me because I existed outside time now, anchored in the eternal present, where both versions were equally real and equally irrelevant. The hardest part wasn't losing my future. It was watching Garrett age while I stayed frozen in the now. 3 years passed according to his journal. 3 years of promotions, relationships, grey hair beginning at his temples. But to me, it was always today. Always this moment. Always 4:47 a.m. under the Rosemont Bridge, even when I was physically somewhere else. My body aged, apparently. The journal showed photos of myself getting older, lines around my eyes, weight settling differently. But I never felt time passing. Never noticed the changes until Garrett pointed them out. "You're still in there," he told me once, though I have no memory of the conversation. Only his journal entry documenting it. The you I knew. You just can't see forward anymore. But maybe that's not so different from the rest of us. We think we see tomorrow, but we're all just making it up as we go. Nice sentiment, but not true. Normal people could make plans, could hope, could dread, could want something more than the present moment. I couldn't want anything. Wanting required a future. The journal entry for October 17th, 2028, exactly 3 years after the original death date, was different from the others. Garrett's handwriting was shakier, more urgent. "Doyle, if you're reading this, I need you to understand something. I found Baines, or what's left of him. He's been in a psychiatric facility in Denver since May 2025, completely catatonic. No brain activity, just breathing. The doctors can't explain it. But I visited him yesterday, and I swear to God, he looked at me. just for a second, and he mouthed 2 words. "She's waiting." The entry continued. "I don't know what that means. Maybe nothing. Maybe the remnants of the loop still echoing through his broken mind. But I've been having dreams lately. Dreams where I'm standing under the Rosemont Bridge and there's a girl in the water, not drowning. Just standing there beneath the surface, looking up at me. And in the dream, I know she's been waiting for 3 years. Waiting for something. Waiting for someone." The final line of that entry made my skin crawl, even though I'd forget it by tomorrow. I think Sarah didn't break the loop. I think she just moved it, and I think it's been counting down to today all along. October 17th, 3 years later, same date, different trap. I closed the journal and looked out the window of my apartment. Houston sprawled beneath an afternoon sky that could have been any afternoon, any sky. Somewhere in the city, 47 people were going about their normal lives, completely unaware that they'd once been marked for death, completely unaware that a girl had given up her existence to save them. Or had she? My phone buzzed with a text from Garrett. "Meet me at the bayou." Now, it's happening again. I read the message, forgot it, read it again, forgot it again. But my body was already moving toward the door, following some instinct deeper than memory. Following the eternal now toward whatever waited beneath the Rosemont Bridge. The water was glowing again, and in the distance, if I listened carefully past the traffic and the wind, I could hear 47 voices speaking in perfect synchronization. They were counting down from 14,